Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, we're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally as important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else. Not in the media and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome to another edition of Illinois Rising, a special edition, a year in review edition, the last show of 2016. Dan Proft. You can catch me on AM 560 Chicago's Morning Answer, Monday to Friday, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. with Amy Jacobson. And guest hosting with me on this year-end edition is Pat Hughes, the co-founder of the Illinois Opportunity Project. And Pat, so two big storylines, one national and one at the statewide level in Illinois. And two very different outcomes, generally speaking. The election of Donald Trump, President of the United States, and the movement-ish in the General Assembly, in kind of the battle royale of the first 2 years of Governor Rauner's term as governor, between the governor and most decidedly House Speaker Mike Madigan. The pickup of 4 House seats by Republicans, the pickup of 2 Senate seats by Republicans, getting Republicans out of the super minority in the House, but still in the minority, decided minority, and moving closer to getting out of the super minority in the Senate. So a seismic change at the national level, a modest change in Illinois, despite what happened all around us in the Rust Belt. What's your assessment of why Illinois was an outlier with respect to the presidential election, and how much we should take away from those legislative pickups at the state level that I mentioned?
So, first of all, thanks for having me back on the show, and Merry Christmas to you and all our listeners. Yeah, it's very, very, very interesting. If you had told me at the beginning of the year that the Cubs would win the World Series, Donald Trump would be president, and the Republicans would be out of the superminority, superminority. Thank you. I'd be surprised. I would have been surprised by that, all three. So, by and large, big year for Cubs fans and for Republicans. You look around us, you see the blue wall crumbling. Wisconsin, Hillary Clinton didn't even campaign in Wisconsin, and it came. She thought it was in the bag. It came tumbling down and went for Trump. Why did the Trump wave pass us? Dan, when you look at the numbers, particularly in the suburban Cook County, suburban Lake County, sort of these close-in suburbs to Chicago, Trump and, of course, Mark Kirk, who is our top of the ticket, a very weak incumbent senator, weak politician, unpopular with his base and otherwise. There's something going on in that corridor that's different than, say, in the suburbs of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or even Philadelphia, where
clearly
where Trump got hammered. Now, there's a little bit of a favorite-daughter thing here with Hillary Clinton, but it was the same with Obama, although he's from here as well. But there's something going on here, and it's different than the rest of the country. And if Republicans want to take back the House, and we picked up seats in the House, we picked up seats in the Senate, but if this wants
not in the suburbs, though, not in suburban Cook and Collars.
I'm just saying,
with one exception of Reich and McHenry.
I'm saying generally, if we want to take control of the House, which is ultimately the goal, and get Mike Madigan out of there, that riddle has got to be solved.
Well, right,
and it's solvable because it's clearly done somewhere else. We just got to figure out how to solve it. But that's the reason that those areas are killing Republicans. Trump did very poorly overall in the state. Overall, well downstate, but Trump in those areas got
Trump
pummeled.
won 91 counties to Romney's 79
right.
4 years earlier. So he lost by a wider margin because he lost by a wider margin, 14 points.
So why is a Des Plaines mother voting for Hillary Clinton or a Park Ridge or Lincolnshire or whatever? Why are they voting for?
It's not just Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. It's why are they voting all the way down the ballot for Democrats, particularly state Democrats, which are nothing more than roll call votes for the Chicago Democrats who've been in charge of the state for the last 4 generations and have destroyed its economy and made it the worst governed state and the worst governed city, major city in the country, and it's not close. So that's, I think people understand what the question is. So where are we in the postmortem to say, why are suburban Cook and Collar County families voting for Democrats who've destroyed this state when you see similarly situated suburbanites, as you said, in our Midwestern neighbors surrounding their urban centers doing something very different?
So I don't have the answer to that question now. If I did, because I'm involved in this stuff, as you know, politically, we would have ended up doing better. And I was surprised at how poorly we did in those areas, even though we did well in other places in the state. But that question has to be answered. And I think the traditional excuses that Republicans have used in the past don't apply, right? One of the things we used to say all the time was, well, it's we're out-resourced, right? Madigan outspends us 4-1, whatever. We had resource parity at a minimum this year with Rauner and with outside groups, including your group. So that's not the reason. There's a messaging issue there, and there were on the Republican side there were good candidates. The candidates worked hard. There's a messaging issue there, and there's something that has to be done, and that work has to be done starting right away before 2018 gets even close.
So let's supposition about what it is. I mean, we may not have it figured yet, the riddle solved, but what about this idea? If you think about the turnover in the Great Lakes over the last several cycles, Walker in Wisconsin and Snyder in Michigan, and 10 years now plus of Mitch Daniels to Mike Pence to now Eric Holcomb in Indiana, Branstad, who's an institution in Iowa, but particularly Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio with Kasich, and Portman. So what's happened there? Because these are all recent occurrences, relatively speaking. My suggestion is that those executives in particular, the governors in those states, that when they were given the chance with upset victories, almost all of them, they took a big risk. I mean, the siege on Madison, Wisconsin, and the recall efforts that Walker has survived. Right to work in Detroit bankruptcy in Michigan. What Mitch Daniels had to do to turn Indiana around from redoing the way the state taxes property and funds schools to expanding school choice to taking on the public sector unions to ultimately making Indiana right to work before he left office. Kasich, also a right to work referendum of sorts that exempted police and fire, but it was a facsimile of what Walker did in Wisconsin. All took big risks, called a question. Have we seen Governor Rauner do that in the first 2 years, and have we seen the Republican Party do that in the last 15?
We definitely haven't seen the Republican Party do that in the last 15. I'm a little bit more tempered with respect to Rauner because I think a lot of people would say he has taken some enormous risk, particularly with not, passing the budget, being in the stalemate with Madigan. It's caused a lot of political risk. He was popularly elected. He had decent approval numbers coming out of that, and now those approval numbers have declined significantly. So he's definitely, I think, taken some risk. Has he taken all the risk that he needs to? Has he gone on television every single day like I would do and talk about who the enemies of the taxpayer and the populace are? AFSCME, the Chicago Teachers Union, Rahm Emanuel in the city of Chicago. That's what I would do if I were governor. I would call the question to who is on your side of the skirmish line, like you like to say all the time, and I would call out the people who are not, and I wouldn't deal with the people who are not, and I would force the issue on AFSCME, on Emanuel, on Teachers Union, and he hasn't done that. He hasn't done that as fully as I would do or would like him to do, but he has taken political risk.
Well, he's taken political risk, but it's not taking it for its own sake. Is it productive? Is it generating benefit? Yeah, it's generating the benefit, and you're not passing another unconstitutional, unbalanced budget like we've been doing for the dozen and a half, the dozen years before he got there. And he's not just signing off on another tax increase to continue to stave off tomorrow for just a little bit longer, stave off the reckoning for just a 1 day longer and get no structural reform. So he has resisted the siren song of compliant Republicans and Chicago tax-eating machine Democrats. But he's also painted himself in a bit of a corner, it seems to me, because he's made this a personnel issue in the public mind. Rauner versus Madigan. And Rauner versus Madigan having a test of wills and being seen like this is some kind of joust, I don't think serves the governor's interests. and I think it endangers his reelection. That's not the kind of risk I'm talking about. The risk I'm talking about is the risks that were taken by those other governors that were transformative in their states. And yes, Rauner has stood his ground to not give in to bad stuff, but he's got to present a case for a good stuff.
So give an example of something that he could do if you had his ear, and you said, Governor, if you did this very thing starting in 2017, to sort of reset the debate. Give me an example of something transformative or big that he could do right now.
I will give you an example after the break, and that's what we call in the business a tease.